I settled onto the couch, attempting to listen to the information Harper had just shared with me. A whole month abroad for an important business venture. She presented it casually, mentioning that her boss had assigned her an important project that required her to manage everything from a distance. It felt significant, no doubt, but it caught me off guard like an unexpected twist. I felt a swell of pride for her, naturally, yet there lingered a tight knot of unease in my stomach. We had never experienced such a lengthy separation. Not since we exchanged vows. It had merely been 3 years since we tied the knot. We were still living in this quaint little place on the outskirts of Sutton Coldfield, a snug spot that worked for us at the moment. We were both putting in the effort, diligently saving for the down payment on our first home. The extended hours were grueling, yet our camaraderie transformed the experience into something manageable. But recently, there was an undeniable quality about Harper that seemed distinct. She had honed in on her professional ambitions, dedicating long hours and seizing every opportunity to advance. "What's with all this newfound drive, Harper?" I had inquired of her not too long ago, attempting to keep the mood light. She had a playful smirk and arched an eyebrow in my direction. "Because I'm going to surpass your earnings someday," she playfully remarked. "We're still in the race, aren't we?" I had dismissed it as just another one of her jokes, but now, seeing her packed with that fierce determination in her gaze, I began to question whether there was more reality to her words than I had realized. Harper had always possessed a fierce drive, yet this ambition soared to new heights. She continued to express how her supervisor was recognizing her capabilities, how she was managing larger, more challenging assignments. She subtly suggested a desire to demonstrate her worth to someone, or perhaps to all. Initially, a sense of pride welled up within me for her. Her strength, capability, and determination were qualities I truly admired. As she meticulously folded clothes into her suitcase, I made an effort to uplift the atmosphere. "I suppose I should anticipate some substantial paychecks coming my way, right? Aspiring leader and all that." She chuckled, giving me an exasperated roll of her eyes. "Just you wait," she remarked with a playful smile. "When I return, you'll be boasting about how your wife is the shining star of the company." Her self-assurance and wit alleviated my concern somewhat. She embraced me with warmth, and for a fleeting moment, I allowed myself to believe that everything would turn out all right. As the day of her flight dawned, a peculiar blend of feelings washed over her. Harper closed her suitcase with a satisfying zip, ensuring her passport and all essentials were in place. "Spending a month in America, are we? That certainly seems like an exciting journey," I remarked, offering an encouraging smile. "I trust you'll have the opportunity to absorb everything fully." She smiled, her fingers lightly grazing mine as she lifted her bags with ease. "I'll return with something special, perhaps a small fragment of the culture." At the threshold, we exchanged a lingering kiss. "Wishing you all the best," I said, offering her hand a comforting squeeze. "Thank you, Maximum, I love you," she said gently, giving me a final, tender look before she left. The house seemed to echo with a profound absence after her departure. The first week dragged on, steeped in my familiar habits. We maintained our connection through messages, brief updates from her about the hectic pace of her job. Her messages provided comfort, assuring me that everything was well on her side, even though I found myself missing her more than I had anticipated. As the weekend approached, I realized it was the perfect moment to replenish the fridge. The absence of Harper left a void, prompting me to venture to a large supermarket on the other side of town. As I strolled through the aisles, checking off items from my list, my mind kept returning to the stillness that enveloped the house. As I stretched for my coffee, a voice I recognized echoed my name. "Is that you, Max?" I turned and spotted Owen, an effervescent friend from my college days whom I hadn't encountered in ages. "Owen, my goodness, it feels like ages since we last connected. How have you been faring?" I inquired, a smile gracing my lips. "Fantastic. I just returned from Key West." "What a delightful surprise to run into you. Have you returned already?" My eyes fluttered open, a haze of bewilderment clouding my thoughts. "Oh, from where exactly?" Her face contorted in confusion. "Key West," she uttered with a measured cadence. "You're where, regarding Harper?" "A few days ago, I spotted her with a guy. She noted that you were in the area with friends, enjoying a bit of relaxation." My smile became rigid, yet I managed to let out a laugh, attempting to conceal the shock coursing through me. Absolutely, of course. I've been overwhelmed with tasks ever since we returned, I remarked, my tone strained. Owen's expression softened, her bright disposition remaining steadfast. Try not to let it get to you too deeply. It was wonderful to bump into her, It's wonderful that you both found a moment to relax. Wishing you well, Max. She offered a bright wave and vanished down the aisle, leaving me rooted in place as if I had been hit by a bolt from the blue. My recollection of completing my shopping is quite hazy. Owen's words echoed in my mind throughout the journey home, each repetition tightening the knot in my stomach further. Harper was meant to be in America. However, Owen had spotted her in Key West, accompanied by a man. The remainder of the weekend drifted by in a blur. Whenever I attempted to make sense of what Owen had expressed, uncertainty would sneak in again. Perhaps it was merely a case of misinterpretation. Perhaps her assignments had taken her to Key West for a brief visit before heading to America. Perhaps Owen simply confused someone else for herself. Yet, despite my efforts to dispel the notion, it persisted, weighing down on me, oppressive and inescapable. By Monday morning, I reached my limit. The darkness had become unbearable. I could no longer remain still in its grasp. Answers were essential. If Harper wasn't going to provide them, I'd seek them out on my own. My hand shook slightly as I reached for the phone and entered the digits for Harper's office. I had no intention of reaching out as her spouse. I needed to outsmart the situation. Greetings, Horizon Technologies. How may I assist you with your call? A cheerful voice responded from the other side. Inhaling deeply, I lowered my voice to convey a sense of calm and ease. Hello. I have been a longtime client of Harper's. We drifted apart, and I would love to reach out to her again. Would you be able to connect me with her, please? A moment of silence hung in the air before the secretary replied, Oh, I apologize, sir, but Harper is currently on leave. She will return in approximately 4 weeks. My heart raced, my fingers clenching the phone tightly. Oh, is that so? I was unaware. Is everything all right? I inquired, making an effort to maintain a calm tone. The secretary brightened up. Indeed. It seems that her husband has sustained a leg injury, and she is stepping away to provide him with care. Isn't that just lovely of her? May I leave a message for her to find when she returns? For a brief instant, I found myself rendered speechless. The phone felt like a lifeline in my hand, my knuckles protesting under the strain of my grip. No message, thanks, I murmured, then swiftly ended the call before I could betray my emotions. Slumping into my chair, I struggled to comprehend the words that had just reached my ears. For weeks away, not for employment, not for America, but because her injured spouse allegedly required her attention. And yet, there I stood, in perfect health, utterly unaware of the intricate deception she had woven. Everything began to align perfectly. Owen's tale, the fabricated business trip, and now this twist. Everything led to one maddening reality. Harper had woven a tapestry of deception to obscure her actions and the company she kept. Rage coursed through my veins, more intense than anything I had ever experienced. I felt an overwhelming urge to reach out to her immediately, to confront her with the truth, and to express my feelings about her betrayal without holding back. Yet a more incisive, commanding voice within me halted my progress. Be cautious, Max, I whispered under my breath. Harper possessed a sharp intellect, too astute to allow a clash to throw her off balance. She could weave another tale effortlessly, and if it came to divorce, would be dividing everything, even the savings we had toiled for. I inhaled deeply, allowing my fury to transform into a chill, more measured resolve. She would not escape the consequences of her actions. She would face the consequences of her actions, but I had to approach the situation with cunning. The burden of her betrayal lingered with me throughout the day, a sharp bitterness I couldn't dispel. By noon, I reached my breaking point. I departed from work ahead of schedule, stating that I was unwell. Upon arriving home, I began my quest to find the top divorce attorneys nearby. An hour later, I found myself seated opposite Kai Norris, a polished attorney with an impressive reputation. The moment had arrived to begin strategizing my next step. Kai sat across from me, his composed demeanor and assessing gaze revealing that he had navigated through situations like mine in the past. In his 40s, he was as sharp as a tack, and his quiet confidence offered me the slightest flicker of hope. As I presented the details, Harper's tale from America, Owen's shocking revelation from Key West, and the outright fabrications she spun at her job. He absorbed every word, making notes occasionally, all while remaining silent. As I concluded, Kai reclined in his chair, interlacing his fingers while he observed me intently. "You have two primary choices, Max," he stated, his voice unwavering. "Initially, you might consider taking a moment to collect solid proof. When you find her in the act, it bolsters your stance. This may assist you in safeguarding your assets and possibly seeking compensation for betrayal." The thought of waiting twisted my stomach in knots. My hands tightened reflexively. "What is the alternative choice?" I inquired, my tone tinged with frustration. Kai nodded slowly. "Take swift action to safeguard what is most important to you. If saving for a down payment is your main focus, we can quietly transfer those funds into an account that is exclusively in your name. Once they are secure, we proceed with the divorce proceedings. When she returns, she'll discover that her choices have been greatly reduced." A wave of relief surged through me, intertwined with a resolute determination. Right now, my focus is solely on the savings. It's my money as well, and I won't allow her to take even a cent of it, I declared with conviction. Kai's lips formed a subtle, approving smile. "We must take action without delay. This is the plan of action you will follow." In the following hour, Kai crafted a strategy so meticulous it resembled a tactical mission. He guided me through the process of safeguarding our savings, each element meticulously crafted to keep Harper unaware. His guidance was precise, allowing for absolutely no mistakes. The communication was unmistakable. The earlier I began, the more advantageous it was. The ensuing days unfolded in a haze of strategic maneuvers. Every evening, I meticulously reviewed our finances, reallocating funds under Kai's expert direction. Each transfer, each step, seemed to restore a fragment of my dignity. By the week's conclusion, I had adhered to the plan meticulously. The funds were secure, entirely beyond Harper's grasp. In the meantime, Kai had meticulously prepared the divorce papers, ensuring that everything was in order. At this point, the only thing to do was await Harper's return. As she stepped through that door, anticipating the familiar rhythm of her life, she would be confronted with the stark truth of the chaos she had woven. The moment we had all been waiting for had finally come. Harper emerged from the cab at the curb, her skin radiant with a tropical tan, her movements graceful and unburdened. She appeared to be the very image of someone who had luxuriated for weeks under the sun on sandy shores, rather than toiling away under the pressure of looming deadlines in America, as she had asserted. Her thoughts were likely racing through the words she had practiced. The relentless rhythm of her work left little room for her to truly appreciate the so-called charm of the French countryside. Approaching the house, she paused, her gaze fixated on a car stationed in the driveway. It was unfamiliar to her. She briefly furrowed her brow, but then dismissed it, likely thinking I had a friend visiting. She retrieved her keys from her purse, poised to open the door. Just as she reached for the key to insert it into the lock, the door unexpectedly swung open. A woman in her mid-30s stood there, her easy smile contrasting with the sharpness of her eyes. A young boy, perhaps around 10, stood beside her, clutching a basketball and sporting a rucksack. The boy looked at Harper with a sense of wonder, yet the woman's eyes held a deeper intensity, one that caused Harper to momentarily hesitate. Harper managed a courteous smile, yet I could sense the discomfort lurking beneath it. "Excuse me, may I ask who you are and what brings you into my home?" she inquired, her tone strained. The woman's smile grew broader, yet her voice stayed resolute and assured. "Oh, you must be Harper," she exclaimed cheerfully, as if welcoming a familiar friend. Harper could only nod, her complexion wan as her thoughts raced for a reason. She parted her lips to voice her thoughts, yet the woman pressed on seamlessly, her demeanor remaining courteous but resolute. "Max said you would be coming by to collect your belongings. My name is Milana, and this is my son, Trey." With a relaxed wave of her hand, she indicated the hallway behind her. "We've just settled into our new place. This home is absolutely delightful. You and Max truly nurtured it with great attention." Harper sensed the ground shift unsteadily beneath her. Her suitcase slipped from her fingers, landing on the porch with a muted thud. Her wide eyes flitted between Milana and the child beside her, her lips forming silent words as she struggled to grasp the unfolding scene. She finally managed to speak, her voice a mere whisper as she moved in. What do you mean? You've taken up residence. Milona tilted her head, her expression nearly contrite, yet a trace of satisfaction danced in her eyes. Oh, Max didn't mention it, she inquired with a hint of feigned worry. We have dedicated the last week to this endeavor. His desire for everything to be flawless for Trey and me was incredibly considerate of him. Honestly, he mentioned it was the right moment for a new beginning, and I'm simply here to ensure everything remains comfortable. Harper's heart raced as her fingers clenched the doorframe. Her thoughts surged, desperately seeking any fragment of reason to make sense of the sounds that reached her ears. This was her home, their home. Max had not alluded to anything even close to this in the brief, detached messages he had sent during her absence. But, she faltered, her voice trembling. This is where I reside. I am the wife of Max. Milona's expression softened just a touch, yet a glint in her eye revealed a certain smugness, indicating to Harper that this woman was fully aware of the situation at hand. Oh, I know, Milona responded with a softness that seemed almost condescending. Harper's hand shook as she fumbled for her phone, her breath coming in short gasps. She dialed Max's number, her heart racing with every unanswered ring. Finally, his calm, measured voice came through. Max, she cried, her voice cracking. What's going on? I come home, and there's a stranger in our house with her kid. What is this? His response was infuriatingly calm, almost casual. Harper, I ended our lease. The house is Milona's now. She and her son are settling in nicely. I figured it was time to make a clean break. Your things are in the garage, he added with unnaving coolness. Milona was kind enough to let me leave them there until you got back. You might want to thank her for that. Her pulse thundered in her ears as she struggled to comprehend his words. Max, what? What do you mean you ended the lease? Why would you? But Max cut her off, his voice colder than she'd ever heard it. Oh, and one more thing, he said, his tone almost conversational. There's a folder on the passenger seat of your car. Inside, you'll find the divorce papers. Sign them whenever you're ready. Honey, see you in court. The line went dead before she could respond. Frantically, she tried to call him back, but each attempt failed. He had blocked her. Staring at her phone in disbelief, the weight of the situation hit her like a tidal wave, and tears began to spill down her cheeks. Milona, who had been watching the scene unfold with an almost pitying expression, stepped forward and placed a gentle hand on Harper's trembling shoulder. I'm sorry you're dealing with this, Milona said softly. Your things are in the garage. I hope you find what you need. Harper couldn't bring herself to look at her. With her mind spinning in a whirlwind of disbelief, rage, and humiliation, she stumbled toward the garage. Inside, she found her belongings hastily shoved into a few worn boxes. Her hands trembled as she clutched the folder left on the passenger seat of her car. The bold black letters, divorce papers, glaring up at her. Tears blurred her vision as she let out a shaky breath. Everything, her marriage, her home, her sense of stability, had been torn apart in one swift, brutal stroke. Climbing into the car, she gripped the steering wheel tightly, trying to steady herself. She needed to go somewhere, anywhere, to make sense of the chaos. Starting the engine, she drove aimlessly before finally heading to a friend's place, her tears falling freely the entire way. 1 week later, the fallout of Harper's return culminated in the courthouse. Max sat across from the woman he'd once promised to love forever, now little more than a stranger. The air between them was tense, crackling with unspoken anger. Harper's fury was palpable. She was blindsided not just by the betrayal she felt, but by the precision with which Max had safeguarded the savings they'd worked for. She hadn't expected him to act so decisively. Her frustration boiled over, and she hurled ugly accusations, even stooping so low as to call him abusive and aggressive, trying to paint herself as the victim. Max, however, remained unfazed. He'd come prepared, armed with his lawyer's advice to stay composed and unresponsive to Harper's theatrics. Her heated words and scathing glares rolled off him like water off a stone. His focus was on one thing, moving forward, leaving her and all the betrayal behind. By the time the hearing ended, Max felt a wave of exhaustion wash over him, but beneath it was a growing sense of resolve. He needed a breather, a moment to reconnect with normalcy. That evening, he met up with some old college buddies at a bar in downtown Boulder. They slid into a booth, swapping stories and cracking jokes over drinks. Max only touched on his divorce in vague terms, citing irreconcilable differences, and leaving it at that. His friends, understanding he wasn't ready to open up fully, respected the boundaries. The group bantered as the night wore on, sharing laughs and trading playful digs. At one point, Henry, one of the guys, excused himself to the restroom. Max's eyes lingered on him as he left, noticing something odd. "Hey," Max said, leaning over to Coulson with a smile. "What's up with Henry? He looks like he's auditioning for a sunscreen commercial with that tan. Or maybe he's been hitting the bronzer harder than a bodybuilder." Coulson laughed, shaking his head. "Yeah, no kidding. I think he was on vacation with some girl, Bahamas or something. He hasn't said much about it. They dodged every time I asked." The name of the place didn't land, but the mention of a tropical getaway sent a jolt through Maximum. His brow furrowed as he pressed for more details. "Wait, you said Bahamas?" Max's tone sharpened, and Coulson noticed a sudden change in his demeanor. "Yeah," Coulson replied cautiously. "Why?" Max's jaw tightened. "Because Kara was supposedly in Bahamas too with a guy." Coulson's eyes widened in shock. "Whoa, are you saying maybe Henry and Kara?" Max's silence spoke louder than any words could. Coulson's expression darkened as realization set in. "Man, that's a low blow. What happened to loyalty?" Max's mind was spinning. If Henry had been Kara's secret companion, then the truth might be sitting right there on Henry's phone. A plan began to form, and Max leaned forward, motioning toward the bathroom. "Listen," he said quietly. "When he comes back, I need him to unlock his phone. Once I've got it, I'll look through it. Think you can keep him from getting in the way if things go south?" Coulson smirked, nodding. "You know I've got your back." When Henry returned a few minutes later, he slid back into the booth and picked up his drink, oblivious to the tension in the air. Max kept his tone light, pretending to be casually interested. "Hey Henry, you've got to share some tips. I've been thinking about hitting a warm spot for a getaway myself." Henry, caught off guard, chuckled nervously. "Oh, yeah, man, you know, just the usual spots." "Come on," Max pressed, keeping his voice friendly. "Show me some of those beach photos. Give me some inspiration for my trip." Reluctantly, Henry pulled out his phone, unlocked it, and started scrolling through his pictures. Before he could react, Max leaned forward and snatched the phone right out of his hand. "Whoa, what the hell are you doing?" Henry protested, reaching for the phone, but Coulson and another friend leaned in, blocking Henry from getting any closer. "Just a quick peek, buddy," Max said, his voice icy as he scrolled through the gallery. Max's stomach twisted as his worst suspicions were confirmed. There they were, photo after photo of Henry and Harper together on a pristine beach, laughing over drinks at a beachside bar, their smiles far too intimate. Each picture drove the knife deeper. Selfies with her leaning into him, shots of them lounging close on the sand, even a sunset photo where her hand rested casually on his leg. Henry's protests faded into background noise as Max's focus narrowed on the painful proof. Without hesitation, he began forwarding every photo of Harper and Henry to his own phone. The images weren't just incriminating, they were gut-wrenching. "Max, come on, give it back," Henry stammered, panic lacing his voice as he made another futile grab for the phone. But Coulson and the others kept Henry firmly in his seat, their expressions etched with disgust. To us, loyalty wasn't just a concept, it was a code. Since college, it was an unspoken rule we all lived by. No one touches another man's girl. Marriage or dating, it didn't matter. And Henry, of all people, had shattered that trust without a second thought. I kept scrolling through his phone, my stomach churning with every new revelation. When I opened the messaging app, the truth hit like a gut punch. A long thread of messages between Henry and Harper laid everything bare. Flirty texts, intimate late-night chats, and excuse after excuse about her business trip. They it all was blatant and undeniable. I forwarded every message to myself, securing yet another layer of proof. When I was done, I tossed the phone back to Henry, my lips curling in a cold smake. "Here you go. Thanks for the memories." The tension at the table was unbearable. Everyone's focus shifted to Henry, the anger and disappointment glaringly obvious. The betrayal wasn't just personal, it was a blow to everything we stood for. Adam broke the silence first, his voice low but razor-sharp. "We had a code, Henry," he said, shaking his head. You don't go near another man's wife. Ever. But you threw all that away for what? A cheap thrill. Henry stammered, his face bright red. It's not what it looks like. Save it, Coulson snapped, cutting him off. We've got eyes, Henry. The photos, the messages, it's exactly what it looks like. And I never thought I'd see you pull this kind of garbage. Henry fumbled for an excuse, his words tumbling over each other. I didn't think it was that serious. I mean, it just kind of. Didn't think. I interrupted, my voice cold and steady, my gaze locked on his, and for the first time, he shrank back. You didn't think about loyalty, or respect, or even basic decency. You thought about yourself, and that's all. The table fell into a heavy silence, the weight of Henry's betrayal suffocating. Finally, I stood, staring him down with a grim realization. You know, Henry, there was a time I'd have knocked you flat for this. I said, my voice quiet but laced with steel. But we both know you'd run crying to the cops if I so much as touched you. Henry flinched, but I wasn't finished. You're not my friend, not anymore. You're a rat, a stranger. So do us all a favor. Stay that way. I turned on my heel and walked out, leaving Henry frozen in place, his face a blend of humiliation and shame. Coulson and the others followed without a word, their silence more damning than anything else. That night, I finally had everything I needed. The photos, the texts, undeniable proof of Harper and Henry's betrayal. The evidence wasn't just for me. It was my ticket to freedom. At the next court hearing, I laid it all out. Every detail, every photo, every damning message. Harper's face was a mixture of shock, anger, and despair as the reality of her actions unraveled before the room. Her last defenses crumbled, and she knew there was no way out. The divorce was finalized quickly after that. I walked away with our savings intact and my dignity restored, while Harper was left with nothing but the fallout of her own choices. As for Harper and Henry, they tried to keep their relationship afloat, clinging to whatever shallow connection had drawn them together. But the spark faded fast. Within few months, they drifted apart, their reputations in ruins, and the weight of their actions leaving them empty and isolated. Meanwhile, I moved forward. Word of what happened spread among our mutual friends, and most chose to distance themselves from Harper and Henry. They crossed a line no one could forgive, and the social fallout was harsh. No one looked at them the same way again. The betrayal had cut deep, but in the end, I was better off. I'd gained clarity, peace, and a clean slate. Standing at the edge of my new beginning, I let out a long breath, feeling the weight lift off my shoulders. The future was mine now, unburdened and full of possibility.